More violence in Venezuela as election results yield more power to President Nicolas Maduro. But opposition parties sat out of the election claiming it was rigged, and now the U.S. has sanctioned Maduro independently. Joining me now to discuss this, Erick Brimen. He is a Venezuelan immigrant and New Way Capital partner, as well as Jillian Melchior, an editorial page writer at the Wall Street Journal. She's back with us. And Vanessa Neumann, president of AstraZeneca and a senior fellow at the former Policy Research Institute. And I hope I said that correctly, Vanessa.
It's much okay.
Yeah, let me start with you, Vanessa. I want to play everybody, late breaking today, obviously, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin and H.R. McMaster announced these sanctions against Maduro. I want to play for you real quickly what they had to say and get your reaction on the other side.
The regime has refused to heed this call, and its recent actions culminating in yesterday's outrageous seizure of absolute power through the sham election.
All assets of Maduro subject to U.S. jurisdiction are frozen, and U.S. persons are prohibited from dealing with him.
Maduro is not just a bad leader, he is now a dictator.
You know, but Vanessa, my initial question when this was happening in real time today was, what are those assets? Do we have access to those assets? How much does he have here in the United States that we can actually freeze, and will that actually hurt him?
Okay, well, so there are two objectives, basically, to the sanctions. One is to seize his assets so that his ATM card won't work anymore. I'm not privy to exactly how much money he has in the United States. A lot of this money is also held in Switzerland or Panama by a lot of these regime leaders. But we know for a fact, for instance, that his predecessor's bodyguard had $16 billion in an HSBC bank account in Geneva. So we can presume that Maduro is somewhere in that realm. The other thing is also that because he's the president, people are less likely to now sign deals with the Venezuelan government. You have a sanctioned president, a sanctioned vice president, a sanctioned Supreme Court. So the idea is, you want to do business with Venezuela, you got to get rid of these guys.
Eric, I mean, you're Venezuelan. I want to actually show our viewers and you as well these live pictures that we're getting out of Caracas. It is a vigil that is happening right now. 10 people killed in those protests against Maduro in just this latest round of protests. I mean, that's on top of the hundreds that have already died over the last year as this country really has erupted into chaos. And it's become, Eric, a humanitarian crisis. Your thoughts?
It has, and it's, obviously this is very personal to me. I have family in the country, and it's the country where I was born and grew up. It's a tragedy. It's a humanitarian crisis, but it's also not just a problem for Venezuela. What's going on there, this power grab, the players behind the scenes, the oil that's at stake, this is an issue for the United States to take very seriously. I was very happy to see some of the moves the administration did today. I celebrate them, and I think they ought to keep going because the timing is right. The government is fragile at this point in time when they have unmasked themselves, and they should keep pushing forward.
But, I have to tell you, I was looking at a quote from Maduro. He told a crowd of supporters, Vanessa, he said, the Emperor Donald Trump says they won't recognize the results of this Constituent Assembly election. And then he said, why the blank should we care what Trump says?
Okay.
Because I don't think he cares.
No, he doesn't care. By the way, I'm also Venezuelan. I'm a Venezuelan-American dual citizen. And I just got back from there. I was there in May. And, yeah, they're sticking hard to their line because that this is like some tribal warfare of, the Bolivarian revolutionaries against the Yankee imperial, they call it the evil empire, because that's the only thing that garners support is sort of this tribal warfare. We knew that the election was rigged. We saw my friends who were down on the ground the day before the election. They saw that they were opening the elections. I know people, got phone calls saying, voting has started, and we knew that it was going to be rigged to exaggerate that they had to vote, that they had more people voting than voted against the Constituent Assembly, which was 2 weeks ago, where they had 7.5 million. So they claim they have 8 million. Right. The real estimate seems to be closer to 2 million. So they've exaggerated by a factor of 3.
Jillian, I want to get you in really quick here because I'm just wondering if, there's so much chaos around the world. This is a part of it. It's a horrific part of it. But can the U.S. really do anything at this point?
I think we can. I mean, if you look at how Cuba has sponsored what's going on in Venezuela, that's another big piece of the puzzle here. And I think that's one potential place where Trump can come down even harder with sanctions and with pressure because they really are behind this. I want to point out, though, I think it's really important to bring up the dissidents in this situation, and Willie Ortega, the violinist, you know, he was taken over the weekend. He was beaten in the head. You're talking about a 23-year-old dissident who can now no longer hear in his right ear. If you want a snapshot of the cruelty of this regime, this is socialism.
And Eric, what do you want to see this administration do, the U.S. administration, besides sanctions? What else do you want from us?
Well, first of all, I agree. I think that paying closer attention to Cuba, who is very much behind this, is a critical leverage point. But let's remember the United States is the biggest buyer of Venezuelan oil. I think that's a very important leverage point. The Venezuelan treasury is running out of cash. And if the U.S. was to take a position of stop the purchase of Venezuelan oil, that would, I think, be the devastating blow that the Venezuelan people are hoping for.